guys, we'll get started in just a couple minutes. Make sure everybody that's hopping on to the live class is with us. So for today's class, I sent it out in the email, but I will go through the props again here. I have a ball. You're welcome to use a tennis ball, a slightly squishy ball. This is a yoga therapy ball. So it's a little bit harder than a tennis ball, but not quite as hard as a lacrosse ball. If you have yoga blocks, great. Hopefully you've got 2 of them. If not, you could take 2 beach towels or 2 thick bath towels and fold them so that it's about this wide. And then you can roll that towel up, creating a nice kind of short squat roll, which is similar in size to a yoga block. It's not quite as sturdy, but for some of the things we do today, you might want to choose that option. I've also got a blanket in case you want to use it as extra cushion, or maybe you just want to use it as a roll. I'll give that as an option. I think actually when we start class today, after we do a little bit of lower body rolling. After that, you might need a bolster. If you don't have a yoga bolster, a couple of pillows would be good, or a couch cushion. Couch cushions tend to be a little bit sturdier, similar to a yoga bolster. Otherwise, use a couple of blocks. For the end of practice, we might end up in a version of legs at the wall. As you can see, I'm outside. So if we end up there, maybe if legs up the wall is not an option for you, maybe a chair, the edge of a couch, or a bed might work really well. If you're using the chair or couch option, you probably want to be able to hook your knees so that your calves lay flat on the seat of your couch or chair. So as we get started today, we are going to start with our legs stretched out in front. Actually, first, we're going to do a little bit of toe stretching today. So I'm going to sit on my bolster. Feel free to sit on a blanket or a block, or just sit on your booty on your mat. And we're going to do a little bit of hand holding with our toes. We did this a couple weeks ago. Used to do it pretty regularly when I would sub in for restorative class on Fridays at the Gainesville studio. So for this particular posture, you might feel silly holding hands with your feet, but we're working on creating that space between our toes. Maybe sometimes there's those little jelly things called yogi toes. If you've ever gotten a pedicure, you leave those little things between your toes to create space. That's exactly what we're doing here. So to get started, pick a foot, any foot, we've got 2. And we're going to weave our fingers in between our toes. That might be a lot. It's okay if you can't push your fingers all the way into the webbing of your toes. Just kind of wiggle them in there, wriggle them in there. Maybe pause and just notice that sensation. I've had a lot of foot injuries in my life, and so this is pretty sensational for me. Once my body's like, all right, this is fine, you might be able to shimmy those fingers a little bit farther in, closer in, so you're holding palm of hand with ball of foot. And you're just gonna start maybe wiggling that foot around, squeezing and releasing, just creating some external pressure to move that foot. No need to try to pop your toes. That pressure is enough. Plus the fingers creating space between the toes is also having quite an important sensation. So we'll wiggle the foot, squeeze and release, maybe squeeze the toes into the hand and then squeeze the hand into the foot. Just notice, for me, I feel this a lot in my big toe. My little toes are very short, and so there's not a lot of space for my fingers to get there. I'm just kind of seeing how it goes, wiggling, moving, leaning, gripping my toes in, gripping my hands in, maybe gripping both. We'll do this for another breath or two. And then we'll hug the fingers into the foot and hug the toes into the hand. Lots of energy and work happening here. And then you start to try to pull the fingers off of the foot, creating a lot of resistance. And then eventually the fingers pop out of the toes and you've created some space. Wiggle through the foot. Maybe look at the toes, spread the toes wide. See if you can actually create space between each toe. Then scrunch the toes tight. And then let the toes wiggle. And we'll switch sides. Feeling free at any time to readjust your seat if it's not quite comfortable for you yet, or if this holding one position is uncomfortable. As you're ready, excuse me, other hand into the other foot. One foot might be a little more okay with it than the other. You get those toes in, then you might be able to press the fingers down toward the webbing, and you just start moving it around. Ideally, we create similar movements as we did on the first side, but it's hard to repeat that exactly. So finding that movement, moving the foot around, maybe pressing the toes back, pulling them down, whatever it is that foot needs. Feeling some mobility, maybe through the toe joints, and maybe even creating some sensation in the arch of the foot. Maybe you grip the toes into the hand and then release. Grip the fingers tight around the foot and release. Moving for another few breaths. And then we'll pause, creating a lot of tension, gripping with both the fingers and the toes, holding on like you're never going to let go. And then slowly begin creating resistance as you pull the fingers out from the toes. Flex and point, wiggle, stretch that foot out in front of you. Spread the toes wide. Scrunch the toes tight. And then wiggle and shake it out. Before we move on, maybe if you've got your legs cross-legged, maybe you switch crisscrosses. And let's just pause and center into our practice. Noticing any sensation in the toes, and what that's maybe already done. Moving sensation into the quads, the thighs, calves, the hamstrings. Maybe it released a little bit of tension through the whole back line of the body, up even into the forehead. As you pause and center for this restorative practice, maybe you sway the body a little so that you can settle into that comfortable seat. And then pause in that outward stillness. Inside, the body's still working a little bit to hold you stable. But mostly your joints are stacked, shoulders over hips. So the body is at rest. Maybe you close your eyes. Scan through the body. Check in with the breath. As we move through our postures today, sometimes guide breaths, helping you focus in on the space each posture is creating. And then, feeling free to set an intention to guide your practice. Perhaps finding a sense of openness, maybe feeling space, or finding relief. Remembering as we go through our yoga practice today, a restorative class means we're working at a 4 or less. So we're not necessarily trying to pull ourselves into our deepest stretch or find our strongest stance. Instead, we're going to let the props support us as we settle into postures for longer holds so that we can target the connective tissue and not just stretching through the muscles. On your next inhale, arms reach high, palms meet at the top. Exhale, hands pause at heart center. Inhale, arms reach high. Exhale, gently twist to your right. Right fingertips find the floor behind you. Maybe the gaze is over the shoulder. Inhale, back center. Exhale, twist to your second side. Just noticing how these gentle twists feel at the beginning of our practice. Inhale, hands come center. Exhale, hands to heart. If you are on a bolster or a prop, you might want to either come down to a blanket or the flatness of your mat. We're going to roll through the backs of our legs just a little bit, mostly focusing in on our calves. Where's the foot? It's right here. We don't always spend a lot of time massaging into our calves, but that muscle group often gets really tight. A lot of us have been doing a lot more walking. Maybe you've been doing some hiking. Maybe you've been doing some running. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on these guys today. So pick a leg. I'm going to use your mirror. So I'm going to use my right leg. And I'm going to pop that ball at the base of that meaty part of my calf. Let me turn sideways so you can see. Right before it gets round. Right before it tapers, yeah? And maybe that's enough. I'm gonna press my hands behind me and bend my other leg, using my left leg as an anchor. Just gently roll from side to side, across the calf, the very base of the calf that feeds in to the Achilles tendon. Maybe you find a spot where you need to just pause and hold for a couple of breaths. And maybe you move it to the center a little. And then to the outer edge. That's the one that gets me every time. Making sure you take some nice deep breaths. And maybe you move it across a little more. As you're ready, you could roll that ball up about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Probably just a 1/2 inch, depending on the size of the ball as well. And continue that cross calf motion, but now you're getting a little bit more into the meaty part of that calf. Might be quite sensational. Seems I have a knot over here on the edge of my calf because every time I roll over it, my leg just like bounces. So I'm going to hang out there, but maybe you continue rolling or take some pauses elsewhere. You can extend that other leg if you'd like. But sometimes it gives you a little bit more traction. If you're using a lacrosse ball, just be sure you don't press down too hard. Lacrosse balls are pretty solid. Tennis balls are a little bit more forgiving. Ooh. Then let that ball scoot up just a little bit more. Ooh, my calves are tight today. And if this feels, I mean, it feels good, but it's a lot. You don't want to have pain while you're doing any rolling, but it can be pretty sensational, especially if you don't roll often. Your body starts to get used to it and expects the kinds of sensation. But if it's newer, it might be a lot. Maybe take one more inch up toward the knee, but be sure you're not rolling on the knee. The back of the knee doesn't need to be rolled. Not with this kind of ball anyway. And before we switch to the other calf, you might push up, plant your foot on the floor, and roll forward and back a couple of times, up and down the length of your calf. Moving from the outer edge to the center, to that inner edge. Once you've rolled a couple of times, scoot that calf off. Extend both feet and just notice what you feel. For me, a lot more of this calf is touching the floor underneath it. When I flex, I can bend my toes back just a little bit more. So let's even out our calves and go to our second side. Starting down there, the bottom of that calf muscle. Leaning weight into your hands. And we just start that cross motion. This side may feel vastly different. We tend to have one side of our body, especially the lower half, where we stabilize more. And so sometimes that side of the body can be a little bit tighter. Stronger, but tighter. Think if you're holding a kid, the side you hold the kid on that hip, that side of the body might be a little bit tighter because you use the other side to do things while holding on. For me, I hold kids on the right side of my body because I'm left-handed. If you find a place where you need to just let the muscle relax into the ball, great. Then we're going to let that ball work up the calf just a smidge and continue that crosswise motion. Also taught ballet class yesterday, so my calves are feeling this for sure. Then it can continue working its way up. You could even straighten and bend the knee a little or flex and point the toe, creating sensation without rolling. Then moving the ball up one more time and rolling side to side. Woo. That side jumps too. At least those knots are even, I guess. Just be sure you're not putting a lot of pressure on the knee with whatever kind of ball you're using. The ball starts to roll away, just stop and scoot it back. Then to finish out this side, if you haven't planted your opposite foot on the floor, go ahead and do so. Press into your hands a little bit, press into the foot, and roll the ball up and down. It's a little bit of an arm workout. Up and down all sides and edges of the calf. And then scoot your ball out of the way. Extend both legs out long. And notice how the backs of both legs feel now. For me, when my knees are relaxed and my feet are relaxed, I can feel my whole calf on the mat. When I flex, I can still feel the whole calf, and my heels are pushing down on the mat. You can circle out your ankles. Just notice what you notice. We're going to shift in to our first opening posture for the front side of the body. Usually I would move us up. If we were in the studio, I would move us up to roll through the hamstrings. But since I'm not sure what kinds of balls we are all using, certain balls will be too much pressure on the hamstring. And so we'll have to wait till we're in class for that. So we're going to go ahead and shift and do a little bit of heart opening across the chest. So, options here. If you have two yoga blocks, you might choose high side and low side. High side is where or high side and medium. High side is where the base of your skull goes. Lower side is right under the chicken wings of your shoulder blades. And depending on how that feels, you might need to do low side and medium. If you don't have yoga blocks, you could stack your towels in a similar fashion. You could take a blanket, have it folded in half, and then fold it in half again, and roll that blanket up. The blanket will be just about the length of your torso, depending on your torso length. And for me, I'm going to choose that option. You could also stack your pillows or do that lounger option if you've got the blocks or the towels where you could prop up your bolster. I'm going to do the blanket today. I'm going to turn around so you can see how that lays down on the torso. You're putting your spine in line with your blanket roll if you're doing this option. You scoot the base of your hips up to the bottom of your roll, and then you lay your torso down onto the blanket. You might have to shimmy around a little bit. And so the body is starting to melt over like a rainbow over that blanket. Arms can come out T-shaped. The head is probably still on the blanket. If not, you could grab another prop to support it, or if it feels good, you could let the crown of the head touch the mat. Placement of the legs is up to you. Personally, I'm going to extend my legs out long. That feels best to my low back today. You could bend your knees. You could even take reclined goddess. Wherever you've chosen to open through the front side of the body, just pause and become aware of how this feels. Maybe there's a little bit of tightness. Maybe your body's resisting the posture a bit. Just let yourself take a few rounds of your natural breath pattern to settle in and notice. Now, wherever you are in your breath pattern, go ahead and exhale everything out. Inhaling for a count of 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. One more. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Feeling free to continue that breath pattern. Or maybe simply taking long inhales and exhales without the pauses in between. Noticing how breath creates space on the front side of the body, and maybe depth and release into the prop on the exhale. Giving yourself about 6 more full rounds of breath. Feeling open and spacious. Your next inhale can begin to find some movement, eventually guiding yourself up to a seat, and just gently dropping your chin to the chest. Noticing how the spine might feel, and perhaps your chest and heart feel open. Continuing with our theme of openness, we're going to work into the hips a little bit. Lots of options here for support. If you've got anything going on with your knees, perhaps you choose to take some reclined pigeon, that figure 4 action on your mat. You could even do reclined pigeon with your legs up the wall. Just kind of listening to see how your body feels today and how these hip openers might affect the body. So for me, I'm going to unfold my blanket once, and I'm going to roll it up this way. And I'm going to move toward the front edge of my mat just so that I can line up there. And as I get there, I'm going to make sure I've got other props handy. Got my bolster in case I want to use it as a pillow for my forehead. Also, I've got my blocks in case I choose to put a block or a rolled towel underneath the booty cheeks. For me, I'm going to take I'm here, so I'm going to take my right leg and take it in front of the blanket. I'm going to kind of roll up onto that hip. Maybe your shin becomes in line with the front edge of your mat. Maybe not. Maybe that heel pulls in toward that back leg. I've got this roll here, and I'm going to make sure I'm not rocked out to the edge, but the front of my thigh is touching that roll of my back leg. So that might mean I scoot the roll over and fold that blanket up and meet my thigh where it is. And so then got a little bit of sensation happening on the hip flexor and quad. My booty cheek is supported. If your hip is high, feel free to grab a block. Maybe you take a bolster in front. and come down to elbows. Really feeling the shoulders staying square in between the hips here. So we're not rocking off to one side. We're not even forcing depth. Remembering we're working at about 4-ish. Surrendering into the posture. Feeling free to sink all the way down if you'd like. Or staying up higher. As you breathe here, feel the breath expanding through the rib cage. Feeling the intercostal muscles stretching and contracting on your exhale. Each little inhale feels spacious through the spine. The exhale might melt into your hip opener just a smidge more. As we pause here, just notice any sensations that begin talking to you. If your knee starts to talk to you, pull your heel closer to your body. Or pop your booty cheek block underneath your right hip. As we pause here, you might actually find the longer you hold, you might have to move some props. Now, my left hip flexor is ready, and I unrolled my blanket, and it's touching the blanket, but now the roll is lower. If your hips are super open, you don't want to accidentally sink into pigeon too deeply. So you want to feel your belly engage just a little bit to help you keep your hips square so that you don't overstretch in this position. You can feel the core engaged to pull that left hip a little bit toward the right heel. We've got about 5 more rounds of breath. And as you're ready, you can slowly walk yourself up and out. Lean over onto that right hip. Let that left leg swing around. Does not have to be graceful. Rock back so your knees are bent and sway the knees from side to side. And we'll set up for our second side. This time, just be sure you're doing the opposite leg. For me, I'm going to do my left leg. I'm your mirror. I'm going to take my right leg behind. Feel pretty good to that leg that's been bent. I might have to press myself forward so it's not the middle of my thigh on the blanket, but it's my hip. Then I check in. Maybe my right hip flexor needs that blanket to be folded in to start, just like my first side. Maybe it doesn't need it this time. And then I come forward. If at any time you would like to take your shin closer to the short edge of your mat, feel free. Or keep that foot pulled in. As we settle to the second side, honor any differences that might happen from one side to the other. You may need a booty cheek block on this side, but didn't on the other, or vice versa. That's why we like to go into hip openers one step at a time. Settling in here, maybe surrendering more. Once again, feeling that breath expanding through the rib cage, the back side of the body. You're not necessarily taking deep belly breaths since you're in a forward fold of sorts. So instead, you feel that expansion through the ribs, the side body, and the back. You might notice that the sensation has changed, and that might mean you have to shift your props just a smidge. Settle in and round out this side. Got about 5 rounds of breath left here. And as you're ready, you can walk up through the palms, lean yourself over to that left side, helping that right leg up and around, bringing both feet planted on the mat, hands rock behind you, windshield wipering the knees from side to side. You can scoot that blanket out of the way if you had it there. Pausing briefly in a seat, noticing how the body feels as we shift into our next posture. For this posture, we're gonna get a little bit into the hip flexors. You may not have gotten into that on your first round, and opening the heart all at the same time. So you may have taken a slight version of this earlier, but maybe not. So we're gonna set up here. I'm gonna use my blanket again, I think. So I'm gonna unroll it because who knows what's happened. Yep. Fold it. And instead of rolling, because I don't want to be quite as high off the ground, I'm going to fold my blanket into just about thirds. So it's a little bit flatter. If you'd like to have the torso a little higher off the ground, feel free to take the roll that I demonstrated earlier for our heart opener. For this one, we're going to lay our torso down on our blanket. A little bit more of our body is supported also from the fold versus the roll. And so it may not be quite as intense of a heart opener. Grab your blocks or your squat rolls of towels. And we're going to lay down. For this one, we're finding some supported reclined bodice. Personally, find Recline Goddess to be a little intense for my lower back. And so I'm going to have these blocks. I'll show you as I lay down. Right about snuggied in to my thighs or at my knees so that I can open out into Recline Goddess with support. So you let your torso find its way down to the mat, scooting the hips up to the fold, making sure those blocks are handy. And then bottoms of the feet come together and knees open out. For me today, my blocks are supporting at my knees. The corners of the blocks are kind of pressing in on the edge of my thigh and onto my calf. And for this time, because we're in the fold, let your arms reach up into a Y shape. Feeling your torso melting onto the blanket or the mat. You could do this without the blanket at all. You can also do this without the blocks. Once again, you can return to some deep belly breaths here, opening across the front side of the body. Maybe the sits bones press down just a smidge more, and the hip flexors release and open. You could also do a slight angled tug of war. Right fingertips reach up to the right corner, then left fingertips reach up to the left corner. Massaging a little bit through the shoulders, letting the head nod from side to side as your hips rest into a hip opener. You can find that movement for about 4 more rounds. And then return to stillness, settling into the blocks. And from here, you can take your hands, guide your knees together, scooch those blocks out of the way. And depending on how the posture feels, you keep the blanket and hug your knees to your chest. For me, that's uncomfortable. So I'm going to scoot the blanket out of my way and hug my knees to the chest. Gently rocking and swaying. Noticing any space that's been created on the back side of the body. Feeling the tailbone. All the way up to the neck. Resting into the mat. Then arms can come out T-shaped. Knees drop over to your right side of the mat. Taking a gentle supine twist. Maybe the gaze is over the fingertips. Inhales create length in the spine. Exhales find depth of twists. Your next inhale brings the knees through center. The exhale drops them to your second side. Honoring differences here. Perhaps noticing openness through the top hip. Your next inhale brings your knees center. You can catch on the backs of the thighs or roll to one side as you bring yourself up to a seat. Setting up here for some modified legs at the wall. If you've got a wall, fantastic. Feel free to extend the legs all the way up it. Even if you don't, if you do have a wall, you might want to feel some of the differences here of having the knees bent and supported on the chin. So you kind of shimmy up to your chin, just like you would the wall. Then you lay down to your spine and scooch so that the knees are bent and supported by your chin. So for me, with this particular piece of furniture, I'm at a slight angle here, so my knees are not stacked over my hips. I'm just letting my quads relax, give them a slight jiggle. And then also letting my calves rest onto the chair. You might choose to stay here in this very gentle inversion. You might rock through the pelvis a couple times, tucking the tailbone and then releasing the tailbone, massaging through the low back, with a little bit of engagement through the hamstring. If you've got legs straight up the wall, you're welcome to stay there. You're also welcome to stay right here. The other option I'm going to give today is a little bit of figure four. If you have your legs extended, you can keep one leg straight, if this was my leg, and figure four the opposite one. If you would like to intensify, you could bend at your knee and bring the knee closer, so you would be sort of foot against the wall. You could do that in the chair as well. But you want to try to keep your hips or tailbone on the mat. So you don't want to press and rock up. So if that's happening, you might decide to let the knee relax back onto the chair. Or if you're in legs up the wall, you would just simply reduce the bend of the other leg. Tapping into one more hip opener while also gaining benefits from a gentle inversion. After about 10 rounds of breath here, including breath prior to me saying that, you can switch your legs out. Figure four in your second leg, exploring those different options. Today, I'm kind of enjoying this very gentle hip opener. I can feel my hips staying square. My spine is supported on the mat. You're also welcome to scoot the foot to the edge of your mat or your chair, or slide it down the wall. Remembering we're not forcing openness here. We're letting openness come to you. after your 10th round of breath. Absolutely no rush. You can release the leg and pause for a couple rounds of breath in your very supported inversion, wherever you are. Just really surrendering the weight of the legs onto the chair or wall. And then deciding what's best for you here. Maybe you stay here for your Shavasana. Maybe you let yourself roll to your favorite side and then come up to set up for your Shavasana. For Shavasana today, I'm going to offer rolling hills. If you know where you're headed, feel free. If there is a different space you like to Shavasana in, go ahead there. Rolling hills takes your blanket. And depending on torso, this is probably good. Then I have my blanket folded into quarters. I have a very short torso though. And I take one fold at the bottom and then a little roll at the top. Then my neck goes on the roll, my tailbone goes on the fold. You might end up needing to fold your blanket differently, but you don't want a thick fold. You can have a much thicker roll, so I'm actually going to take mine blanket in half, fold up about a quarter of the way, and then take a little bit of a roll from there. That's actually a little bit closer to my torso length, most likely. Then you grab your bolster, and as you lay down, you place the roll under your neck and the fold under your hips. The bolster goes under your knees. For a side view of what that looks like. For me, my heels kind of hover above the ground. And then you lay your torso down, adjust the roll however you need. As you settle, simply allow yourself to find a space to surrender. Maybe you just take up space, arms and legs reaching wide, letting go of tension on the front side of your body so the back side of your body can melt into your props or mat. Feeling supported and secure. As you relax into Shavasana, perhaps your mind returns to your intention. Drawing your awareness to a sense of openness throughout the body. Maybe your toes feel open and spacious. Perhaps you find release in the calves from the space you created with the ball. Hovering your awareness at the hip joint. as you feel tension let go. Space on the outer hip. Openness on the front. That awareness moves up the spine, feeling openness between the ribs and across the collarbone. The shoulders. Surrender to your mat. Just a bit more as you relax and surrender. And consciously deepening your breath. Maybe a smile comes across your face as you begin to find movement wherever you are. The movement can be tiny in the feet and fingers, and eventually begin to become bigger as you move through the whole body, embracing the space you've created, and letting go of whatever you've released. If your legs are up the wall, go ahead and begin to make your way to your favorite side. Slowly and steadily moving, no rush. If you're fully on your back and you've got the props underneath you, shove the bolster out of the way, hug the knees to the chest, and then reach long in a full body stretch, fingers away from the toes. And then from wherever you are, you can begin to guide yourself up to a comfortable seat. Maybe you roll to your favorite side. Maybe you gently rock up, arriving where we began, in a comfortable seat. Shoulders stacked over hips. Inhale, arms reach high, palms meeting at the top. Exhale, hands pause at your third eye as you seek openness of mind. They rest at your lips so that you find honest words, and they settle at your heart as you arrive at a happy heart. Thank you for allowing me to be your guide for your practice.
Mommy,
Namaste.
I heard a carpenter bee when I was inside.
Oh, really?
I've been inside.
I heard one out here. Maybe you just heard him out here. Bruce, thank you for letting me teach class.